I must admit this episode is not one of my favorites because it is merely a filler episode in which they are building up several conflicts. And of course Emily is still not talking to David. The only thing slightly positive about this episode is, they finally wrap up Charlotte's plot and we did not see her again until the finale. Which was kind of sad but good for the evolution of her character. Like I said before, I would have liked to see her having a real strong scene with Emily and reconcile with her. But I guess the writers did not want to take time for that. So we have to adjust to this scene and the letter. Which they even had not the courtesy to fill with content. I mean, how could they not come up with at least some meaningful sentences? The idea was great as a reminiscence on David's letter to Amanda from the pilot. But come on, why is she not reading it out loud? And don't get me start about Louise's plotline. This one they are taking really too far even for a lunatic. I mean, did they think after all Emily and Victoria had done they had to go further with Louise to show she is really crazy? I was glad when she met Nolan and this sick obsession with Daniel and Victoria got a pause. He had a good influence on her. About the new flashback. Finally, this feels like home. Emily at the beach and thinking about happy childhood memories. What spoils the memory is the wrong kid, since Emily Allen Lind's sister was introduced in season 2 as a younger version of Amanda. Before they lived in the beach house and her mother was still in the picture. Anyway, that had to recast Emily Allen Lind because she got too old for the part. By the way, I like what she is doing in the Gossip Girl reboot. Though I do not like the whole show, I was really intrigued by her character and her problems. She got even more substance and backstory than the two lead characters, which is one of the main problems of the show. But back to revenge. The second thing that ruins this flashbacks is that they obviously did not use a fake beard for David, so that he could take it off for the flashbacks. Here he looks as old and weary as he is after several years in prison. But I love the magic light in all those flashbacks. It looks like a fairy tale from old times and surely must feel for Emily that way. And David's wounds bring her back to reality. Which is cruel considering that we all know David is lying about this. I remember I was more furious about that and not knowing what explanation he has for not contacting his daughter, than for the actual problem that everyone is lying to him about his daughter and Emily is not going to reveal herself soon. So I guess the writers did a great job in manipulating us, or just me. About Charlotte's first murder. I know this one counts as self-defense again and she did not intentionally kill him. But now she has hit the bottom. And I guess this episode should not only mark Charlotte's demise and the begin of her final recovery, I hope so for her. This should also introduce a new threat besides Victoria for Emily and David. About Victoria and David. It speaks for itself that she is always talking about him and here. Not about him and their children. Here she talks about imaging their future together, but no word about Amanda or Daniel at least. It seems as if she is really blocking them out. About Victoria's look. I know at first it is because she has no access to her old wardrobe and no money, but I like this new look. She looks kind of a country lady with this sweaters, cardigans and jeans. And those simple girly-like dresses make her look younger. About Nolan and Emily being suspicious on David. Yes, we are far wiser than the two calls we saw David killing Conrad and hiding somewhere. But still I was not convinced about his story. If you think about it, how could he have known about Conrad's arrest? I mean, if Conrad held him captive, the checks would have dry out and maybe his guards would have let him free. But would it not wiser from them if he had killed him? Let's say they tried to get rid of him and he actually managed to flee. Okay, he would not have contacted Emily because he thought Amanda who died was his daughter. So he planned his revenge on Conrad. Maybe on Victoria, too. And since his old feelings came back and he wanted to connect to his other daughter Charlotte, he stayed with her. But what did he do in the meantime, and why did he not contacted Nolan or Jack or anyone else who knew Amanda as a girl? Was he not curious about how his daughter lived and died? All these questions he is asking now and trying to find answers. Why does he not try to find a more reliable source? Since Victoria did obviously nothing to help Amanda. His story has a lot of holes. So Emily and Nolan are right to distrust him. And I must admit I was furious that he multiple times denied Victoria and Emily as well to tell them the truth about his absence all these years. I guess the writers were desperate to come up with any ideas. And what's worse, with all this expectations they were building up by not telling us time after time, it could only be a big disappointment. Even more, I am still wondering how he could fool the FBI. I mean, for Emily this would have been no problem since she is trained in this and surely could also beat a polygraph. Or withstand questioning of a foreign secret service. But David, who still has to recover from a massive trauma and injustice, seems not to be that mentally strong to take on a specialist. Again, revenge shows not much respect for the legal system here. About Daniel and Victoria. This scene was strange. Why does she not tell him that Emily locked her up? Does she fear Daniel would take her side since he hates his mother so much right now? And she is searching for getting his compassion piqued. About Ben being obsessed with the Conrad Grayson murder. This was really annoying. I know the whole reason they are mentioning this is to show us that Emily is helping her father. And that he is still in trouble because he murdered Conrad and he is obviously the prime suspect. Even more because of his story that Conrad kept him a prisoner. So this was not a good alibi and no real great idea to distract the authorities. But who cares? I mean, we have bigger plot holes here than the unsolved murder of Conrad Grayson. And that is the whole problem with Ben. He is just annoying. Of course they are also trying to drive a wedge here since Ben at first thought Jack did it. Which is a pretty obvious choice, but he has an alibi since he was questioned because of Charlotte's allegations he was her kidnapper. A good combination here, cause it would have been hard seeing him arrested again for a crime he did not commit. But David. Anyway, Ben is not giving up because his ambitions lead the way. And that is the problem we have later with him. He is so overly correct and in love with his job that he just does not fit in Emily's crazy world full of conflict and broken laws. I mean, you could say she and Nolan are doing this for fun. Collaborating and falsifying evidence is only a finger exercise for them. Jack's quote about him stop being a pain in the ass just sums up his role for the audience and Jack. He is the obstacle between Emily and Jack, and spoiler alert, he even later becomes the one who puts Emily in jail. About Emily's last scene with Charlotte till the finale. It is a shame that they only get this rushed conversation. Though they are trying to give us at least some kind of resolving things with Emily and Charlotte. After Jack and Victoria, it is now Emily's try to talk some sense into Charlotte. And even though it might be the circumstances as well, I like that she is the one who puts Charlotte finally back on track. I love how they are showing the details of how Emily is making this story real. She even thinks about getting Charlotte's skin scales erased under his fingernails. And using the drugs to fake an overdose, just brilliant. So Charlotte goes scot-free, as you say. By the way, they are revealing how Emily managed to explain Aidan's dead body in her beach house. She could not accuse Victoria since she looked her away. But I thought Nolan and Jack would have helped her with this. Anyway, faking an overdose for him must have been hard, since her first instincts must have been to sell Victoria out for murder. I guess Nolan and Jack had a say in this and helped her cope with the situation and maybe even took the job to talk with the police. I cannot imagine how Emily could have held herself together to do this. More reason to hate Victoria for this gift she left at the beach house. since we saw Emily mourning in the first episode. I wonder what Victoria feels when she is sitting on that sofa where she, or rather someone she hired, put dead Aidan after she had killed him. Anyway, I love that Charlotte finally gets to know her mother is a murderer. I think she never got to know about Helen Crowley or even cared. But the murder of Aidan seems to hit her and is the right information to be the last drop that makes her break with her mother. So for me the scene was worth it. Even though we had no real emotional sister talk and reconciliation. About David's trap for Nolan. This was a fine trick by the writers. They really made us believe Nolan could help pulling David out of Victoria's grip. I was so disappointed after that interview that could not play better right into Victoria's hands. Now that David cut ties with Nolan because of Emily's lies and humiliated him in front of the cameras, he is even more sustainable for Victoria's lies. And instead of revealing herself to him, Emily is just desperate to investigate his story instead of asking him about his lies right away. So this episode is on my list of episodes I did not at all enjoy watching. I mean, first watching it, the whole tension was thrilling because you did not know what David was gonna do in the interview. And they made us believe until the very last second that maybe some tiny little piece of truth about Victoria would come out. I wonder why they are only tackling Conrad's guilt. I guess this is all Emily's fault since she was so eager to take Conrad down and lock Victoria up. She did not consider what to do with Victoria when she was free again. So I guess she had no plan B this time. Seeing this again, I just feel sorry for Nolan and hate David for being such an ungrateful and naive man who believes nearly everything Victoria tells him. Why did he not speak with Nolan in private about this instead of accusing him on live television? The only thing I enjoyed in that scene was the editing. Letting David spread his lies while Emily is discovering how he staged that prison to fake an alibi. When did he have the time to do this? Or was it planned even before he killed Conrad and contacted Victoria? About David hitting Nolan. They really doing a great job in making us hate David. I cannot see why. Was he not supposed to be the victim? Now it seems more he is the villain in this story. Seeing Nolan hurt on the floor like this was just too much for me. And how could Emily not walk into David since she is coming in only a few moments after he left? At least they are establishing that it could be dangerous for Emily to reveal her true identity since David is that violent even to a former friend. So what outburst has Emily to await if she tries to talk with him? About Charlotte telling Daniel the truth. Finally someone is filling Daniel in. Funny that David is really the last to know about Emily's real identity, when he is in fact the one who should have known first this season. I like their little conversation here about the common fear becoming as worse as their parents. I really thought we would see them both break free and get a happy end. 'Cause after all they have been victims of their parents, too. And even though they did some terrible things we watched throughout the seasons, mostly they were manipulated by their parents to do so. Or in Daniel's case, they had the duty to protect this family. I get that they had to find an excuse for Emily still not telling David who she is since he is obviously that desperate searching for answers, and Victoria's grip on him since she is the only person left from his past gets even more tight. By the way, this is not true. Has David forget that Jack was Emily's playmate in the summer before he got arrested? And he was married to the woman who David thinks was Amanda. Why not searching for answers with him and talking with Jack about his doubts on Victoria? He is a far more reliable source and someone David seems to respect. I know this would have put Jack in a bad situation. But he could be a mediator between Emily and David here. And he could set up a meeting in a safe space which would be his home. Yet I must admit they are doing a great job in distracting us with this carrot that David is lying and the mystery why he is doing this. and even more mysterious where he has been all those years. So again they are putting up this great expectations over several episodes on the answers and resolving it very poorly. Considering this huge cliffhanger here, the resolution of this was very much disappointing. But that is another episode.